And we paid £1 each to make this little shellac recording in Kensington in Liverpool. And the idea was that we'd keep it, each of us, for a week. So I had it for a week, John had it for a week, George had it for a week, and Duff had it for 23 years. This is the first record we ever made. In spite of all the danger, in spite of all that may be, oh, I'll do anything for you, anything you want me to, if you'll be true to me. In spite of all the heartache that you may cause me, oh, I'll do anything for you.
Can't get out of my bed, there's a thought crime running through my head. Can't take these rules, and people are fools who believe what they read and believe what they see, believe what they see on the TV. Opinions are like iPhones, everybody's got one.
Hello, welcome to episode 27 of Glass Onion on John Lennon. So today we are concluding the talk with Mr. Colin Hanton, ex and current Quarryman. Don't know how many times I've said that in the last year, because I said that all the time with Rod Davis as well. Anyways, so today we cover the Percy Phillips recording, which has always fascinated me, the 1958 recording of That'll Be the Day and Paul's original song of that time called In Spite of All the Danger. And what you just heard there before the intro music was Paul introducing a performance of it that he gave. It was a show he did to promote Chaos and Creation in the Backyard, so that would have been mid-2000s, talking about John Duff Lowe holding on to the record for rather a long time, which we get into with Colin later on. That's, of course, the only song in the history of the world to be credited to McCartney Harrison. Another weird thing with the Beatles, of many weird things, is that of their early songs that got published, of course, at the same time they recorded My Bonnie with Tony Sheridan, we had Cry for a Shadow, which was George's instrumental. Very good, I reckon. Pretty good song, that. And that was credited to Harrison Lennon. And then for the rest of the Beatles' career, Harrison was never credited along with his two bandmates. Well, there were a couple of things credited to the whole band, but you know what I mean. He was always the loner, writing his own songs. And, of course, having his own label as well, Harry Songs. Anyway, that's another story. And then we talk about Colin's life after his departure from the Quarrymen. As you'll hear, he was kind of eased out, I suppose, as this bond between the chief three Beatles became more and more intense and close. Colin was a working man, almost like an adult compared to the other three, even though the age gap wasn't too much. Although, you know, the age gap between him and George was over 4 years, so that's almost like a lifetime when you're that age. There's this misconception that everyone who left the Beatles or the Quarrymen or the Silver Beatles, whatever stage they were at, missed out and would automatically be very bitter. But I really believe that wasn't the case. I mean, Colin, as we said, he drummed with them for, 2 years. I think he was there just at the beginning of 1959. So that's a very short time, it's not like the Pete Best case. We do actually bring up, I don't know why, the Pete Best Ringo thing seems to be coming up all the time now. But anyway, we just touch on that as an example of John, Paul and George's apparent ruthlessness. That's the only reason that comes up. Just a couple of things I wanted to say. I'm a tiny bit embarrassed by this interview. I sound very unnatural here, but as I was saying last week, when I went to his house, it is a bit of a weird occasion. Listen to the introduction from the previous show, and I go into that about just basically arriving at an 81-year-old man's house for a couple of hours and having a couple of cups of tea and leaving, I suppose I wasn't nervous in the sense, but I was a tiny bit uncomfortable. But I think it went fine anyway. It sounds fine, but I just sound a bit like I'm kind of laughing at things he says that weren't really meant to be jokes or whatever. But I've done a bit of editing, so you may not hear all of that, to be honest. And so in that spirit of not being too slick, I've left a minute or two in at the end when Colin disappears to get some photos and show me them. And of course, that's quote-unquote bad radio, you know, when you're looking through photos with someone that obviously the listeners can't see what you're looking at. I just left those in because I don't want to take this too seriously. Anyway, let's go to the show. I've got some stuff to say in the outro, actually, about the upcoming shows, but I'll see you on the other side. Enjoy. So let's kind of talk about the band post St. Peter's Village fate. One of the things I found was amazing was that Rod left the group after the fate, and you literally didn't see him for 40 years. It wasn't really a goodbye, and then he's gone, and then...
That's right, he just disappeared.
So you see him when you're like... What age were you then? Like 19 or something? And then you see him again, and you're in your... both in your late 50s. That must be so strange. And then didn't the same thing happen with... Pete was still around, Len and Eric. I've written all these names down. All these names now are like... For like Beatles fans, they're like legend, you know. Colin Hanton, Len Gary, Pete Shotton, Nigel Wally... Who have I missed?
Well, for many years nobody thought about us, did they? It was only because they were going to pull St. Peter's Church Hall down that Jean Cattrall contacted us, because she was the Beatles fan club secretary or something in Liverpool, and asked us if we get back together again to do just a one-off charity concert.
40th anniversary, 97,
That's right. So I said, good heavens, I've played drums for 40 years, I couldn't do it, you know. But we were persuaded and we did it, and my goodness, before we knew where we were in Cuba, weren't we?
Really?
Cuba?
Wow.
Within 12 months we were in Cuba. Incredible.
So Paul joins the group. I have to say, another thing I was quite surprised about, how quickly the group changed. I mean, within 6 months, so you've got Paul in there, and then you get George, and then George gets a pickup and an amp, and basically his electric guitar, and you're basically a rock and roll group.
Yes, 57, Was that, no, 58 that would be, wouldn't it?
Yeah, but like even, I think, judging from the book, it's like early 58, so really it took in 6 months from the Village fate to that, so it all moved pretty quickly. Paul has this kind of reputation for being a bit PR and a bit sneaky. Did you have a good impression of him, if you can remember?
You know, he could be a bit like that. He was, he would never give you a quick answer. Every answer would always be carefully thought through, you know. And he would sort of manipulate John. You know,
oh really?
He knew he couldn't boss John around, so if he wanted to, like the white jackets, well, oatmeal jackets. You know,
that's
I'm going to wear a white jacket, John. So John wasn't going to stand there without one. So that was a way of getting John to do something.
It's so interesting.
If he wanted to do songs that John didn't like, it would take a fair amount, a very diplomatic manoeuvring to get John to agree to it. I think he knew if he just went head to head with John, you know, John would say, well, it's initially my band, and you know that's it.
Because I think Nowhere Boy I think it did a fairly good job of this. There's a few bits where John goes to make an announcement, and then Paul makes an announcement at the same time, and he's like, "Oh, hang on a minute," you know. Was that always a kind of... Paul was kind of a sort of lieutenant, if you like?
Oh, well, he was John's second-hand man, we were just fodder at the back, weren't we? We were just backline, and he would replace us as soon as he possibly could, I think.
Right, That's kind of the story that apparently happened with Pete Best. I mean, the Pete Best thing has been debated for
forever,
50 years. I mean, no one's ever going to resolve that.
Well, I think George Martin had a lot to do with that, didn't he? When he said he wouldn't use them on the recordings.
Yeah, but then David Bedford's counter is that was quite normal. They used studio drummers. David Bedford's a bit more in the camp that Pete was a good drummer.
Right.
And certain other like podcasters and authors have gone completely the other way and said, he was rubbish. And
no, I think Pete was a very good drummer and a loud bass, but I think that would have caused problems for Paul, because what you do with Pete Best, what do you pay him for? And we've got to pay Pete Best for not being on the record, and we're going to have to pay a session drummer for being on the record. It all got complicated.
Because there were some issues with, was it Nigel Wally taking an equal share?
Oh, yeah. I mean, we used to get like 5 10-shilling notes off Charlie McBain.
That's right.
One went to each of us, and that was forever a bugbear of Paul's that he should get 10% or something. John and I didn't care. We were all making a bit of money, so... Yeah.
And you actually, because you were working, you gave them your appearance fee, didn't you?
I did in the end. I thought, let them spend it. They were moaning about the price of guitar strings and that, so... I was a fool, wasn't I? I should have gone to sign a contract.
I should have done, thing I wanted to ask you about, was it Wilson Hall that was a rough area? What's the one they called Bloodbaths or something? Garston.
Garston. Garston Village is like North Liverpool down there.
Yeah.
So there was the Wilson Hall on one side of the road, which is a purpose-built dance hall, and on the other side of the road was the swimming baths. But they were put floorboards over the baths, and they would have a dance in there. And it used to be quite rough, you see, and there would be a lot of fights, so they got the nickname of the bloodbaths.
Yeah. Is that the roughest venue you can remember? Or
yes, definitely, yeah.
Yeah, the swimming baths.
Garston, yeah.
Sounds quite funny to think of like swimming pool being the roughest area.
Yeah.
Probably wasn't a joke then, was it?
No, certainly wasn't a joke then, no.
Have you ever read Alan Williams' book? There was that book that Alan Williams wrote that he actually admitted that the author cooked up about 80% of it.
Oh, right.
He kind of really played up, not sullying Alan's memory, by the way, because he was a very, very important part of the story. How serious was it? Was it life-threatening, or was that going a bit far? What was the worst that could happen at one of those gigs?
No, you'd probably get a good kick in there, and that's the worst it'd happen.
Probably flick knives and chains, though.
Well, they talk about that, but I never saw anybody use one.
Okay.
So
it's more just letting off a bit of aggression.
Yeah. The chains and all that, maybe some of them carried them, but I think a lot of that was the media stuff, wasn't it?
Yeah. Sounds more dramatic, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Quarrymen emerge with their lives, that kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
You got chased to the bus a few times. That was one I remember. Yeah.
Well, my safe haven was in the pub because I was old enough. You see.
Yeah, you did spend a bit of time in the pub, I noticed.
I did.
Well, nothing wrong with that. Yeah.
Well, the thing I found with guitarists, even now when we go, on the road somewhere, guitarists they always just sit together and fiddle about with the guitars, don't they?
Yeah.
I'm straight to the bar, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Same with pianos, I suppose, because you talk about Duff Low later on. Okay, where are we? So, going into 58, what gradually was happening when George came in, they kind of formed that triumvirate, if you want to call it that.
Yeah.
That kind of bond. Because I think really with the history of the Beatles, obviously the music was hugely important, but I think that three-way bond was huge.
Yeah.
And I personally, I don't know the truth of Ringo and Pete Best, but it seemed to me that even something as silly as the fact that Ringo could have his hair in the bowl cut, I think the fitting in part of it was huge.
Yeah, fitting in part, yeah. But I recently saw John Lennon doing an interview, or did I hear it? I can't remember now. But he shocked me. He said we couldn't stand Pete. He said he didn't improve one bit in Hamburg.
Oh, John Lennon?
Yeah, this is what John was saying.
Yeah, but I'll tell you what, that was an interview he did in December 1970 for Rolling Stone.
Oh, right.
And if you listen to that interview, I've got the whole thing. He's just coming out of that primal therapy that he did, and he spouts all this stuff, and he kind of took a lot of it back, so I'd probably take that with a
pinch yourself. Yeah, fair enough, yeah.
So I know the quote you mean. He said, he was rubbish, he never improved. We only got him because we needed a drummer, and we got rid of him as quickly as possible.
Yeah.
I love John Lennon. He's been an important person in my life, but a bit prone to exaggeration. And
well, yeah, he said he said to Paul on the very day in St. Peter's, he said, do you want to be in the band? Well, we know that wasn't so.
Yeah.
It didn't happen like that. In fact, I explained all that in my book.
Yeah, you did, you did. So and then I felt sad when I read the story about the cowboy shirts. John, Paul and George turned up in the cowboy shirts. You had a cowboy shirt at home, but they hadn't told you.
They hadn't told me they were dressing up, so I was a bit piffed off about that,
I suppose one of the things you need to become a star or something, you need maybe perhaps a certain ruthlessness.
Maybe, yeah.
I would say. Yeah. Confidence and ruthlessness, I suppose.
Well, when getting rid of Eric, Eric had started the thing.
Yeah, that was a sad story.
Yeah. But as you say, ruthlessness. So come the time, that was it. Eric was out. George was in.
I guess it's difficult to say, but did you have any projections of the future? Did you want to be a musician, or was it?
No, I had
still pretty much
like
fun?
That. I got a job at Guy Rogers, an apprentice upholsterer, and they could have put me anywhere, and I'd have probably just adapted. You know what I mean? I'd just enjoyed myself, whatever it was.
And did you carry on doing that? How long did you stay with Guy Rogers?
Till it closed down in 97, I think. Ended up as prototype manager. But this is one of the 3-piece suites that I made. Because I ended up, after Guy Rogers, I went down to Derbyshire to work with a big factory called Englanders for a while. It was 12 months down there. I used to go down on a Monday morning, drive back on a Friday afternoon. Stay in lodgings just by the factory, So that didn't work out. The guy that took over Guy Rogers and closed it down, the youngest son started a factory in Runcorn called Lancecraft, so he contacted me, and I was in between whether I'm going to stay in Englanders or come back home. So once he offered me a job, that was it. John said, you don't have to go to Englanders, you've got a job. So I took a job with him, but He only stayed there 6 years. He got all the money he could after the, start up things for 6 years. And then he went, so I found myself self-employed. Got a factory in Runcorn and started making furniture. So that lasted for a while.
So as you sort of finished with the Quarrymen, did it feel inevitable maybe? Or?
No, once I finished with the Quarrymen, things were getting slightly more serious with Joan. Yeah, they called her Auntie Joan, then she killed me. With Joan, so, I remember playing at the Cavern one night, and, as soon as we were off stage, I was back home on the bus, put my drums on top of the wardrobe and went back up to the village to meet them coming out,
From reading the book, you always seem more like an adult, because you're obviously even just a couple of years older, weren't you? But you were the working man.
Yeah.
It was almost like you had quite a different life.
Yes.
They had no money and they were kind of...
That's right.
So I guess they all bonded with that, perhaps.
Those lads, yeah.
Not having any money and...
I think that's why I got on with Aunt Mimi so well. She didn't mind me somehow. I used to go to the front door. I never knew this rule about the back.
Oh, you were allowed in the front door?
Yeah, I used to knock at the front door.
Wow, you're one of the few, I think.
But don't forget, we always had suits and ties on, didn't I?
Oh, for work?
Well, not only for work. I mean, that was the general... I mean, you couldn't get into a dance hall without a tie on. You couldn't get in. I mean, that was the dress code. So there's no good turning up at Barney's, like Dovedale Towers there. Yeah, with no tie, because the doorman would just say you're not getting in.
People now probably can't believe how radical like the cowboy shirt and all that would have been.
It's true.
It really was, wasn't it? I must ask you about the Percy Phillips recording, because there are quite a few strange coincidences in the Beatles story. One of them, of course, is that Elvis in 1953, 5 years earlier, had made a sort of sound recording. He sang My Happiness, it's one of the famous ones. And of course the engineer was Sam Phillips.
Yeah.
So there was a bit of a Phillips thing going on. And actually Elvis's recording and your recording, I mean the sound quality is quite similar. Yeah,
is it?
Yeah, I mean they're not that dissimilar.
Right.
It kind of adds to the magic of it, because there's a big hiss in the, sort of shh, it's your record, it really is, I don't know, it's a piece of history to me. And,
well, I suppose it is, yeah. Thankfully,
is.
I'm glad it survived.
I'm so pleased it survived as a fan. So David Bedford told me that was more or less the only place you could record. I mean, recording studio, you'd have to put quote marks around it.
Yeah.
It was kind of a 2 up and 2 down house with...
It was. Yeah, part of his shop. He recharged batteries. Do you know when you had the old liquid battery for the back of your radio and you would take it to the shop? And that's the kind of thing he did.
Right. How old was he? He was quite an old man, wasn't he, already? Well, 40s.
I suppose he was in his 40s. I mean, yeah.
Could you just briefly tell us what you remember about that recording?
Well, I just remember the excitement of it all. We were going to make a record. I mean, I didn't think we could ever make a record, but, once they found out about it and how much it would be, we all decided we needed 3 and 6 each to get down there. And then we met outside the Hippodrome, I think, where John Dufflow lived close to there. And we just made our way to Percy Phillips, so that was it. Once inside, we had to wait in a side room while somebody else finished off, and then that was it. We just went in, set my drums up.
And the room was
probably not as big as this.
Well, I was going to say, yeah, this is radio, but we're in a standard front room, and you're saying it was smaller.
Slightly smaller than that.
So was it basically enough room for 5 of you?
And he had all his equipment in one corner.
Yeah.
I think there was one mic, and he put something on the door, a palliasse type of thing, a padding, and that was it.
Early soundproofing.
Early soundproofing, yeah. And he asked me to play my drums, and I said I was too loud, so I moved away from the centre and was still too loud. I got right in the far corner, still too loud, so I had a scarf on. I don't think it was cold, I think it was a fashion thing then. I got round to wearing scarves, so I just put the scarf over my snare drum.
One unusual thing about it is that in spite of all the danger, it's actually 3 minutes 20 or something. And I mean, no records, none of the Elvis records or any of those were ever like 3 minutes, I don't think.
I think they took a verse out and they put it on the anthology.
They did, yeah, that's right. And you were saying that, or in the book you said that you literally had like 1 second left or something. And
like
Percy's
that,
like, no, stop.
Yeah. I mean, he'd already told us, we ran through, as you might call a rehearsal.
Yeah.
And he said, no, that's too long. John said, no, we're paying. So when he tried to stop John just kept on singing and singing. Just managed to finish just before it hit the paper disc in the middle of the record.
Yeah, amazing.
And the Buddy Holly one, well, we did that. That was one of our regulars on stage.
That'd be the day,
like the Buddy Holly one.
It's pretty good though, isn't it? I mean, that recording... Pretty decent, I think. And you said John Dufflow was a really good piano player, was he?
He was a good piano.
What style? Was he classical or was he just pop and...
Well, he trained classically because of his parents, but he liked Jerry Lee Lewis.
Oh, yeah, so he could do all those.
Well, he could do that stuff, yeah. That's why Paul brought him in to do the honky-tonk piano.
And they hadn't told you either, had they? You just appeared.
No, I just came to Paul's house and who was he like?
Yeah.
Well, that was it, you see. I was just a backstreet drummer, wasn't I?
Poignant as well, because it was 3 days before Julia died. And
Yeah.
I never knew that until recently.
Mm.
And the plaque is wrong. The plaque says the 14th, so we know for sure. Saturday the 12th of July, right?
Yeah.
58.
Large day. In fact, I think they've changed my face now, haven't they?
Yeah, they
I
have.
think. Originally, the initial one was Ringo.
That's bizarre.
Yeah, couldn't believe it. When I got hold of the guy who made it in the pub, because we went to the Pilgrim afterwards, sandwiches and drinks. And,
Yeah.
I said, why on earth didn't you contact me? He said, well, I didn't know how to contact you. I said, there's about 8 Hantons in the telephone directory, and they're all related, for God's sake. So somebody at the other end of the bar said he was too lazy, just stuck Ringo on.
Yeah. And then I love this story. Your friend Charlie, your drinking partner,
Charlie Roberts.
you tell us about how his wife Sandra saved the copy of that record, because there was only one copy, wasn't
There
there?
was only one copy,
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't find that out until 97. Was that the anniversary, the 40th anniversary, when this grey-haired old man tapped me on the shoulder, and I don't know any grey-haired old men. It was Charlie Roberts and his wife, and then she was saying that it was that phase where they put records into boiling water.
78. Yeah.
Is that what it was? Folded them into plant pot shapes or something.
Yeah.
Well, they were horrible, weren't they? Because they're all black, weren't they?
And they're very fragile, 78.
Yeah.
I think I broke, my mum might listen to this. I think I broke one of her 78 when I was a kid. She doesn't know about it yet.
No, she was telling me the story about how she was doing this, and she picked the Quarrymen up and almost put it in the boiling water. And
Yeah.
well, no, that should go back to one of the Quarrymen. So I think Charlie probably met Duff Lowe in town and passed it on to Duff. Duff looked after it for 20 years.
That's right, till 81, and then Paul bought it off him. Yeah, that's not bad.
Well, Duff decided to sell it, but he wanted to advertise it a little bit. So I think he contacted a journalist to put an article in one of the newspapers. Like the Sunday Express or something, I don't know what it was. But Duff said it went out on the Sunday Express, and by Sunday night Paul had phoned Duff's mum to say, I want Duff's phone number.
He likes collecting. He's still got his old guitar. He's a bit of a nostalgia buff, isn't he, Paul? Yeah.
He had to negotiate with Duff.
What made her save it? What did she see?
Well, he had a label on, didn't he? Quarryman. Spike of Danger, that would be the day.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
so she recognised. I see. I had a question, actually. You had a workmate called Joe Fagan. Is that the same Joe Fagan who became the Liverpool manager?
It wasn't actually, no.
Okay.
Yeah, no. He was an upholsterer and working Guy Rogers.
I was thinking that because I'm sure you would have mentioned it in the book otherwise. Yeah. Alright, so you finished with the Quarrymen 59. There was another interesting thing. You saw John, Paul and George on a bus.
Yes.
They disappeared on you. And I remember thinking that was a funny parallel with what... You know the Pete Best thing, they got Brian Epstein to sack him and they couldn't really face it. That was quite an interesting thing that they didn't want to face you.
They didn't want to meet me and say, they just,
So they were a bit uncomfortable.
After that night we just parted, didn't we? And I'd had enough. I thought, not messing about anymore. But coming home from work, from Guy Rogers, talking to friends as we were going upstairs, and the three of them on the back seats, because I was deep in conversation with the other upholsterer, I couldn't actually stop and talk. In fact, the first thing I heard was George's voice saying, "There's Col."
Yeah.
And I sort of gave them a thumbs up, went and sat down, finished my conversation with Joe, and then I said, let's go and say hello to the lads. Got up and no lads.
Yeah.
Got off in the middle of nowhere.
And then you saw John a few more times on the buses.
Yeah, I saw John a few more times on the bus.
Was he the one you were closest to, would you say?
Probably was.
Three?
Started off with John.
Yeah.
Paul came in. And I know Paul didn't think I was much of a drummer, because he could be critical. Not always while I was around, but certainly when I wasn't around.
Did he play the drums at that time? Do you remember?
No, he started, didn't he, sometime later, so.
Yeah, because when they were in Hamburg, he was kind of a utility man, because he could play a bit of piano, a bit of drums, well, obviously bass later on. And then there's the amazing thing of when they had the Northern premiere of A Hard Day's Night. 10th of July is almost 7 years to the day of the Village Fete, 6 years to the day of your recording.
Oh, right.
Yeah, quite amazing. I read this in another book. The limo actually did go down Forthlin Road and past Paul's house. Did you happen to see the Carpool Karaoke last year?
I did actually. I thought that was quite good. Yeah,
that's weird, isn't it? He went through the doors of Forthlin Road for the first time for 54 years.
The worst thing about that was Colin Hall's wife, Sylvia. She's the curator at Paul's house. She was off that day.
Oh no!
And the guy from the National Trust, the big boss, went there. Didn't say to Sylvia, Paul's coming. So when
there's another lady in the house.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, they have like a stand-in, don't they?
Yeah.
So when Sylvia saw it, obviously she was really annoyed.
I know the piano in there is not the original one, but she let me play. I played the piano, play Lady Madonna, and she let me play, so that was quite good. And then I guess the next thing you know that they're famous. I don't know, I suppose 63 you would have heard. 63 they became famous in England.
When were they on television the first time?
That was 62. They were filmed doing Some Other Guy in the Cavern. That wouldn't have been like national. I think that was Granada. 63 is like London Palladium.
Before that, because I came home from work and Granada reports used to be the news thing at 6 o'clock at night, and towards the end the newsreader said, right now we've got a treat, we've got a band from Liverpool called the Beatles, and suddenly there you were playing something. What the bloody hell are they doing?
Yeah. You knew they were the Beatles, didn't you, by that?
Somebody said they've changed their name to the Beatles. Yeah.
And then the next 7 or 8 years, that must have been quite strange. They were just always there, weren't they?
I was sick of them because you couldn't pick up a paper. They're all getting a haircut or having their toenails clipped or something. Everything, man, flipping.
Well, in America, they were selling the bed sheets that they slept on.
Oh, God.
Paul tells a really funny story about in America they sold a bit of toast that George Harrison had bitten from. I mean, it's just so ridiculous.
Yeah.
And Paul said this brilliant story that his kids were then saying, "Oh, Dad, have you finished with that toast? Maybe we can auction it off." And that's a funny story. Through the 70s, did you think about them? Or did you think about the old days, or is it just...
Not really, no. I just got on with my life, you see. Yeah. Well, the first thing is when they became like 62, 63, when the mega started. Because all the people that I worked in Guy Rogers with, especially the upholstery, I started off in a school of like 6 apprentices. So they all knew. In fact, they'd seen the Quarrymen on the Empire and Wilson Hall. So once the Beatles became this mega group, I mean, I was the butt of all the jokes for a long time, wasn't I? You know,
for
laughing and saying they were the
missing
Beatles,
out.
They were the Quarrymen. So I got pretty fed up with it. So kept my head down. I never talked about the Quarrymen for 20 odd years.
Yeah.
And even if somebody new started in Guy Rogers, somebody would say he used to play with the Beatles, and they'd come up to me and say, "Hey, is that right?" I'd say, "No, they're just pulling your legs, you know." And go back to the other fellas that were out.
Yeah. And then, 1980. Where were you when you heard about that? December.
That was the time when Guy Rogers had closed, and I'd gone down to Derbyshire. So I was working in Derbyshire at the time, and that was bad news, you know.
Horrible.
It was horrible news, yeah. I mean, it wasn't that he died of something. You know, he'd actually been bloody murdered.
Yeah, it was the violence
worse, yeah.
outside his house.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, because when people are young, you know, you just think being famous is automatically the best thing that can happen. Obviously, there's the money and the girls and everything. But, you know, at the end of the day, John Lennon was killed outside his house. George Harrison was nearly stabbed to death. I mean, when he was attacked.
In his own house, yeah.
In his house. I mean, Paul McCartney, I'm sure he's a fairly happy person, but, you know, he's had a few problems as well, you know. So
yeah, he has, but I think Paul's handled it better than anybody, really, hasn't he? He seems fairly down to earth, and he hasn't sort of spoiled his kids, has he? You know.
Yeah, they went to normal schools actually. Yeah.
And you go out and earn £100, I'll give you £100.
Yeah.
That's what his philosophy, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Whatever you earn, I'll double it. If you don't earn anything, you're not getting a penny. I mean, unlike perhaps some other people, they lavish them with whatever they want, and then they start drinking and taking drugs, and suddenly your daughter's at it.
Because I actually have a friend in St John's Wood, near the Lord's cricket ground, and they see Paul around because Paul generally eats in this French restaurant every whatever it is Friday afternoon, and he's quite well known. But there's a couple of videos on YouTube of like the paparazzi hanging around him and annoying him, and I was thinking, like, if that's 5 minutes of his life, I can do without it myself. You know, obviously there's the perks, but.
Well, John said he would love to go for a pint in the crack, but he couldn't do it. He's be allowed. Yeah. They all wanted to redo the cavern, didn't they? But again, the authorities said, if you try and go down the cavern, you know, that Master Street's going to be full of thousands of screaming kids.
Oh, in the 60s.
Yeah, you can't do it.
Yeah, because they went back to Hamburg in 66 and they were toying with the idea of playing there, and they said, forget it. If you look at the scenes, I mean, one of the stories of when they made Hard Day's Night, the director, Richard Lester, said one of the cameramen lost 2 teeth.
Yeah.
Because the nerves were so damaged by the noise of the screaming.
Good heavens.
I mean, incredible. It's exactly like standing on a runway when a 747's taking off or landing.
Yeah.
The more I read about it, I think it was fun for a while. And I think in the end, really, they all, probably John, Paul and George and Ringo, probably all had pretty much nervous breakdowns, really, when they split up. So.
Yeah.
Have you ever seen the Ruttles? Have you ever heard of the Ruttles?
Russell, yeah. He just died, hasn't he?
Yeah, Neil Innes, yeah.
Neil Innes. We saw him a few times when we were in America. Flew in with him, and we shared a taxi with him a couple of times, going to and from the venues and that. Yeah.
I mean, those songs he wrote. I mean, writing sort of Beatle-y songs, but not Beatles songs. I'm actually a songwriter, but I can tell you that's a very difficult thing to do. Yeah. We're actually doing a tribute show. We're going to do like a commentary of the film, the Ruttles film.
Oh, right.
Great stuff. All right. Yeah, we've finished. Thank you very much.
We done? Oh, that's good.
Yeah. Well, if you can carry on if you want. What else do you want to talk about?
Well, we could talk about the tea-chest bass that people used to play in, you know.
Yeah, all right, go on
Used to
then.
play with the tea-chest bass.
Yeah.
There's one in Penny Lane. Have you been to Penny Lane Community Centre?
No, I don't think I
You've
have.
got to go in there. It's like a Beatles shop in there, but there's a yellow submarine in the grounds, which is the original yellow submarine that they used for the premiere, you know, of the yellow submarine.
Yeah.
But there's a tea-chest bass in there. There was some people came to visit, and I had to go and do a little talk. And one of them was like a lad of about 12 or something, you know. He just couldn't understand this tea-chest bass, so I turned it over and said, well, that's how tea came into the country.
Yeah.
It was all in this big thing, and it was put behind the counter in the grocers. And if your mum went for a £1/4 of tea, you took a little shovel in, put it into a paper bag, tied it up, and she went home.
Well, before tea bags, obviously.
That's right, before tea bags were invented.
Yeah.
So she'd take the paper bag home, she'd put it into a tea caddy. The paper bag would go onto the open fire, so there's no waste. The dried tea leaves would probably go on the garden. And then once the tea was empty, well, everybody used them for storing books, and anyone was moving house, they had loads of tea chests, didn't they? You know? So I said there was no pollution, there was no waste.
How could the tea chest be heard? How loud was it? Could you...
Oh, it was quite loud. You get a good
Was
bump
it?
out of it, yeah.
Oh.
Get a good bump out of it.
So you just get this kind of bass. You obviously can't play more notes, can you? It's just this sort of...
Well, it depends how hard you pull the string.
So you can get different notes?
You can get different
Oh, I
notes
didn't
on it.
know
You'd
that.
have to work on it, but you're going to get different notes, yeah. Yeah, I wouldn't know how to write them down, but you can do like bump, bump, bump type thing. Yeah.
Len Gary's still alive, isn't he?
He's still alive.
Still around,
He sings now. He does the singing now these days.
Okay.
We lost Eric, of course.
Yeah.
Pete Shotton is gone. Yeah.
When did Pete Shotton die? Was that a while ago?
About 2 years ago, I think. Maybe a bit more than 2
I think it
years.
was a bit longer than that, actually. Yeah.
But he stopped playing with us quite a few years ago because we went to a number of places like America and he wasn't well enough, you know. And of course, once he'd been advertised at the Quarrymen, he wasn't there. There was some guy particularly annoyed because he'd driven like 400 miles to get his signature, you know. Where's Pete Shotton? So, well, he's sick, you know. Nothing we could do about it.
Did you see him through the 60s or did you...
No, he all just disappeared. I saw him a couple of times on the bus when he was a policeman, you know.
Oh yeah, policeman.
One time we got on the bus going home from town and he'd obviously been on night shift or something, you know, and he'd fallen asleep, and as he'd fallen his pelvis had come off his lap. I went to sat next to him, right, Pete. But he said when he first, you know, sent him out on the road, he said he sent me out with a bloody mallet, a truncheon and a whistle on a night shift in Garston.
Oh, the old days of the Bobby, like walking down the street with his hands behind his back and...
And he said I spent the whole night hiding in doorways.
Good. Was that
Well, that's where the Shelly Boys were, where Wilson Hall was. That was the Garston baths, the blood baths. So, he wouldn't have wanted to be seen down there in the Bobby uniform.
And is Liverpool pretty much unrecognisable now? Or I don't mean like buildings-wise, but I guess it's retained a bit of the spirit there, has it?
Well, the spirit's all there, the comedians are still there, but obviously it's rebuilt itself a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, the Albert Dock's pretty good, isn't it? That's the only thing I can thank a Tory for was the Albert Dock.
Oh, yeah.
Hasseltine saved it, didn't he? You know, he came up with the idea of doing that.
Yeah. Well, when I was reading about when you said you got a job at 15, you were kind of set up for life, I was quite envious because my working life has been very turbulent. I've moved jobs, I've moved countries, all sorts.
Oh, right.
Yeah. My life hasn't been particularly stable, but...
No, I think it was a good trade. A friend of mine, well, it was an upholsterer friend of mine, you know, he said, I'll never drive a Rolls Royce, but I'll never go hungry. And that always stuck in my mind now. Even when I gave up the factory in Runcorn, I still carried on doing recoveries. And all I needed really was a pair of scissors and hammer and nails and stuff. You know. That was it. So think the last job I did, I was about 79, I think, when I actually decided enough's enough.
So you retired at 79?
Mm.
Oh, wow.
That was it.
So your film, you said the film's going to come out
Well, I'm hoping it would come out this
2021?
year,
Okay.
2020, because, I mean, they'd finished it last year. The last communication I got off was some guy who said, did I have any photographs of school friends? He was editing the film and putting them all together. But I had to reply back to, unfortunately, my school didn't do that. We only did the individual ones, so you were lucky. But then later on, after contact, I did sort of remember in the back of my mind, I'm sure they did the very last term when we were all leaving, I think they did like a yearbook when everybody had a picture and a page and people wrote about me.
Yeah, that's right.
I was a very small boy with a very loud voice. I remember they wrote that. Where that book is now, I have no idea. It's probably well gone. But I had a habit of walking in late and just shouting, I'm sorry sir, I missed the bus. You know, there's nothing delicate about me.
Yeah. Who else is going to be in that film? A documentary? It's not going to be an actor playing you.
Well, strangely enough, they did contact me after they'd gone back to America, and they asked me if I had a photograph of me as a young lad, because they wanted to find a young lad to play me as a young lad. So it's all getting a bit confusing. So they filmed me all round here, all round Bootle, took them all round places that I went. Granny Jones's house where I grew up in Bootle. Granny Hanton's house is gone now, it's a new housing estate, but all the Quarrymen are in it. Plus, oh my goodness, who's in it? I should know, shouldn't I? Bob Harris was in it.
Oh, DJ.
Billy Bragg's in it. There's lots of people that you've interviewed. Peter Phillips, Percy Phillips' grandson, he's in it. There's some names in it, but I can't remember, they don't know. They keep trying to get Paul. I think that's why the film was taking so long. I think they were just holding out hoping that Paul would say, okay, I'll give you half an hour somewhere. You know.
Do you know that Rod Davies met Paul in 2004?
Was that down on the beach?
Windsurfing.
Windsurfing.
Is it windsurfing that
it
Rod
was
does?
windsurfing, yeah.
I think Rod met him once in 57. I think Rod had left, but he was there or something, and he met Paul once. And then 47 years later he saw him and he said to Paul, do you know who I am? And Paul's like, no. And he said, oh, I'm the guy you replaced in the Quarrymen.
Yeah.
And are you guys playing? Are you going to play this year, the Quarrymen?
Yes, we're playing in Grachau, with somewhere in Germany.
Oh, okay.
We're doing a cruise ship, believe it or not.
Oh, right.
Beatles themed cruise ship.
Oh, great.
Yeah. We should have been in Mexico City at the beginning of December, but I wasn't well enough.
Oh, okay.
I just had a bit of a bladder infection, and I thought 14 hours on a plane,
Yeah.
you know, I need the toilet about 10 times, and if it's a night time and I'm stuck on an inside seat and everyone's asleep, you know.
Yeah.
So I said to Rod, I'm awfully sorry, I can't do it. So
it's you and Rod and who else is it? Duff?
No, Duff's right hand doesn't work anymore.
Oh, right.
I think it's some nerves in his neck that's affecting it. So he's done less and less. So there's Rod Davis, me, and there's Len Gary who does the singing,
Okay.
and Chas Newby.
Oh, yeah. He
Chas
played
Newby's
bass.
our bass player now.
Ah, yeah. He played the famous Little and Town.
That's right, yeah. He said he was a Beatles for 2 weeks.
Yeah, 2 weeks.
Played 5 gigs or something, yeah. He's the first left-handed bass player.
Ah, that's right. And he was a Beatle and then a Quarryman rather than the other way around.
That's right, yeah.
Yeah.
Because once Eric died, we were a guitarist down, really. And we needed a guitarist, so...
Oh, you could have asked me if you'd known me.
Well, I'm sorry, we could have asked a lot of people.
Yeah, you could. I'm sure there would have been a lot of takers.
Rod wanted somebody with a connection, really.
Yeah. No, I was
so
kidding.
once you find Chas Newby, Chas Newby can talk about the Little Town, which is what he does. That's where we get away with our gigs, you see. We do Rock Island Line, and then Rod talks about him hearing Rock Island Line and how we all became skifflers. And then 20 Flight Rockets, this is what the Paul did. So in between each song, we'll all tell how we were invited to join the Quarrymen. So it fills it out, but... Len and I sometimes get fed up with the chat. We just like to do more music. But Rod said it's the audience who come up afterwards and say they really appreciate the stories.
Yeah.
They can go and see Beatles bands every night of the week if they wanted to.
Yeah.
But the fact that we can actually talk about John meeting Paul and Paul joining and meeting Eric and that.
Do you ever change the stories for your own amusement or not?
No, we'd probably get shot down if we tried that.
Yeah. Rod told me that. Because so much is made of this meeting at the Village Fete, and at the end of the day it was just two teenagers. Rod told me that he tells the Americans that he went off for a piss.
Oh yeah, that's
when Paul arrived, and he missed the greatest meeting in rock and roll history.
Yeah, he used to say he went home for his tea, but that didn't get any kind of reaction. So then he decided to say, we went for a pee, which did get a bit of a reaction.
Yeah.
But did he tell you about the picture that some guy painted?
No, I don't think
I've got a copy actually. It won't be a second.
All right.
I've got a copy upstairs. Oh, hi, love. Are you in? I didn't know you'd come in. How long have you been in? Oh, you didn't tell me. Right, we're not filming, love. We want you to take a photograph of
Audio only.
That's the picture that this fella's.
Ah, yeah, I think I might have
Can you
seen
sign
that.
that for me to Colin to someone?
So who is it?
Well, that's John Lennon. This is
yeah.
supposed to be Paul. That's Ivan Vaughan, who introduced him. That's me. That's Len, Pete Shotton, and this is Eric. And he said to Rod, "I've put your banjo by the chair because you told me you went to the bathroom." So Rod's story just got. Here you go. Left
So it's
down.
a true story. You went for his tea, and
Yeah.
you went for your tea
I
as
went
well.
down. Yeah, I went down.
Oh, you missed the most historic meeting in the history of the world.
Nobody told me.
I know.
Nobody told me it was a special story.
Yeah, no one told you they were going to be famous in 10 years. Yeah.
Are you in a car at all? Are you?
In a car? No, busing today.
Well, that's the original drum kit.
Yeah.
You've probably seen most of these, haven't you?
I've seen that one, yeah.
Oh, they are. There's Percy
There we
Phillips.
go, yeah. Oh, Ivan Vaughan with the picture space.
Ivan Vaughan on me. There's Percy Phillips.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
'Cause
Sorry,
he's-
I'm boring you now.
That's all right. No, his grandson's got a Facebook page.
Party.
Yeah. Could we just record the sign off and then we can...
Yep. What do we
Relax.
have to do?
Oh, just to say goodbye. That's all.
Goodbye.
All right, so thanks for doing this, Colin. It's been lovely.
That's fine. Thank
Great
you.
to meet you.
Checks in the post, is it?
Yeah, it is, yeah. All the best in the future.
No, it's been very nice meeting you, mate. Thanks very much,
All
anyway.
right, you're welcome.
Wish you all success.
Thank you.
I should have made that joke about the checks in the post.
That's all right. I can edit it. So there you go. Colin Hanton. Very nice fella. That was an interesting and worthwhile experience. I've included links once again to Colin's book, Prefab, and the trailer for the upcoming film. So just to tell you what's coming up, I've been doing quite a bit of hustling actually, and some amazing stuff is coming up. I've already got, well, by the end of this week, or let's say by the end of January, I'll have enough shows already in the can just to be edited to keep this going till probably March, I think. The ones that will be coming up, I'm actually being featured on Jude Sutherland Kessler's show, She Said. She presents that with Lena Stagg. Jude was on my show, obviously, and we got on very well, and she's going to be we're going to be introducing clips from some of my shows, so that'll be fun. I think I'll put that out as a bonus episode. After that will be a two-parter with Scott Phipps on the other Imagine film, the 1988 film. I'm doing one looking at portrayals of John Lennon on film, and then one about John Lennon in 1970. Gosh, sneak previews, eh? And then Scott and I will also be talking about How I Won the War, John's 1967 film. Of course, filmed in 66. We all know the story of Strawberry Fields, etc. And that will be for his show, kind of like a swap cast. So that will also be an episode of this show. So, well, ridiculous amounts coming up. I've also been in talks with various people, one pretty high profile and controversial figure. More on that nearer the time. So we're going to keep this going for quite a while yet. My plans for podcasting in 2020, I've already mentioned I may well be doing a more general show looking at alternatives. Hardly a word anymore, is it? It's so overused that scarcely means anything. But just looking at news beyond the mainstream. I still say there's a huge gap. I still believe that the news is heavily managed. Well, I don't even believe it, I know it. And that's a discussion I would happily have with anybody who cares to discuss it. The other thing about this podcast, I may well be changing the music fairly soon, because I actually want to use the music we have at the moment, which is a song called The Fool's Guide. I actually want to use that for the Truth podcast, because it's more relevant. It starts with people are fools who believe what they read and believe what they see. Take that with a pinch of salt, because I say later in the song, if you ever care to listen to the whole song, that I'm a fool as well. They were all being fooled. That's kind of the point of it. So I might just be changing it to something else, probably another instrumental version of another one of my songs, because that song, The Fool's Guide, is a recording I did myself in Madrid. So anyway, loads coming up. So numbers for the podcast are growing steadily, and more people around the world are becoming aware of it, and I'm getting some lovely messages, as I've been saying a lot recently, but it's very, very rewarding, and I'll be around for a few months at least, till this perhaps reaches a natural end, or maybe it won't, who knows. There's a lot of scope, we're not just talking about John Lennon, as you can see, the Colin Hanton interview you just heard. I mean, that some of it was about John Lennon, but, it's a chance to branch out into other areas and not to have any rules with this as well. That's very important to me. So anyway, thank you very much for listening once again, and I'll see you very soon. Goodbye.